For those of you who don't know me, I am cranky, difficult, and I have very clear ideas on what I think should happen in the art world. I came to bonsai also through fine art. I'm a fine artist, and Liam, I'm also a tattoo artist. So I thought that would shock you a little. I find that when I first came into bonsai, I came and I started growing trees over 35 years ago. I came into a very much a male-dominated world with a very specific outlook on how to do things. There was a right and a wrong, okay? And as an artist, I've always felt that things could be done differently. Not better, not worse, just differently, okay? So a lot of people talking, and in Cape Town, we always have this conversation in the last, I don't know, I've been hearing it for the last 15, 20 years. When I started, we were bonsai growers, okay? Then we became bonsai designers. Now people talk about bonsai artists, okay? And that has actually got me thinking about this talk, okay? I think what we forget is that virtually everyone sitting here has a Western outlook on the world, okay? And sorry, I put the writing behind me simply because I know people struggle with my accent, okay? So within this Western outlook, I've often queried, I've often questioned, okay, whether, you know, bonsai is an art or is not an art. And I know it's a very touchy topic because everybody that says I'm a bonsai artist really means they are a bonsai artist, okay? So I think I'm going to try and work out that definition in this talk. For me, I have learned, for example, that and when I looked at defining bonsai, you know, I always leaned towards defining it as a craft, not an art. Okay, and a craft can be incredibly amazing. Like, for example, you can see this amazing vase from the Smithsonian Museum. It's absolutely beautiful. But normally, craft is a blade of two edges for me, because as a woman, traditionally, and we're looking back over the centuries, women were never considered artists. They were considered crafters. What our art materials have been has often been thread, you know, and fabric. And it's always been belittled, you know, as not an art but a craft, okay? And then when I come to looking at bonsai, I think, and remember my framework of bonsai dates back to 35 years. When I first started bonsai, this is the sort of images that we saw on shows, okay? We had these S-bends that were horrendous, these straight branches with just little pom-poms at the end of them, you know, and we used to walk into shows and think, oh my God, that is unbelievable, okay? But there was not much originality and thought in this. I mean, we had books that we followed, and I'm sorry, this is not about to offend anybody. If you make trees like this and you get pleasure out of this, then you are in the right path, okay? And for me, it's the pleasure of making that I'm talking about, okay? I'm not here to disregard anybody or belittle anybody. If this is the sort of tree that you consider high art, please continue, okay? If it makes you happy. For me, it was something I outgrew a long time ago. I mean, I remember getting those wonderful books of Colin Lewis and Peter Adams and looking at these images and thinking, my God, I want to make trees like that. I look at those books now and I cringe. I think, how could I think that was beautiful? So then, when I was about 25, I had the privilege of going to the Far East for about 6 weeks. And during that time, I traveled in China, in Taiwan, in Singapore, Thailand, and in Malaysia. And while I was in Hong Kong, I came across a whole lot of books in black and white with the most unbelievable photos of Penjin, okay? So very early in my bonsai development, Penjin created a big impact in my life. When I saw the trees that are displayed at the Kokufu, okay, I saw trees, for example, that I knew I could never, ever reproduce in my lifetime. It was only years later that I realized that those trees were created generationally. A grandfather or a great-grandfather started it, then the grandfather continued it, then the son continued it, and the grandson would one day inherit those trees and develop them. I have no interest in having my children do bonsai. They don't like the idea of greenery, and I know that my bonsai need to make me happy, okay? But when I saw these amazing shapes of the Chinese tradition, they felt attainable to me, okay? So I felt that the differences between East and West at times are very difficult to pin down because they differ in everything, from creative expression to governance to any way of doing things, okay? And especially we differ in the appreciation of art, okay? And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see a single Japanese person here, okay? So we are all Westerners at heart here, okay? We have a Western influence in our outlook on life, okay? So virtually you have a complete divide, okay? In the East, okay, the concern is about nature, in the East the concern is about nature, but without the self. You have Buddhism, which is the nice self, and you just want to be an instrument through which nature speaks. In the West, we are obsessed with originality, okay? And I mean, like Liam was saying yesterday, you talk about original thought in painting, in art. It is that kernel of originality, okay, that defines art in the Western world, right? So, we also have the problem of imitation. In the West, imitating is at best tacky, at least an original, and it's normally frowned upon. But when you actually look at the Chinese and Easterner way of interpreting copying, you get a completely different understanding of what copying is to them, okay? So for example, if you think of what the founder of Alibaba said, okay? And I'm going to read what he said. And it was about 2016, so that's 9 years ago. The fake products today are of a better quality than the real names. Virtually, he was actually only speaking the truth. Today, you go to the Far East and you can get knockoffs of anything, that are actually better quality than the Louis Vuittons, okay? So, they have two types of copying, okay? And I cannot begin to pronounce the words, so I'll do them with a Spanish accent. The one way of copying is called fancy pin, and that refers copies that are clearly not a copy of the original, but an imitation of the original. So in this case, a keyring reproduction of the Eiffel Tower, you take it home with you after a trip, and it's not the Eiffel Tower, but it's a way of remembering the Eiffel Tower. Right? You have a second way of copying, which is called fusi pin, and please, wonderful with a Spanish accent, okay? And that is when you reproduce the original as well or even better than the original. And you can see it here with a Louis Vuitton handbag. You cannot tell which is the original and which is the fake, okay? So we are talking as Westerners, okay? So we have a very different appreciation of art. I mean, I know friends of mine, that if they show a handbag and it's a Louis Vuitton and somebody says, oh, but that's a fake, they actually cringe at the fact that they have a fake or that one of the friends has a fake. That is how the West is. We want that originality. And why, okay? So, why are we individualists? We think that everything for us, okay, the act of creation, okay, it embodies the spirit of the artist, and in a way, as a reflection, the spirit of the creator. Because most of us have been brought up believing that the creator has made us special and unique, okay? And that is what we reproduce in an art. I know there's no Western artist that wants to actually be told, oh my God, your work is like, or it's you copying Pierre Nief, or you are, you're getting inspired by them, fair enough, but you copying, it's a big problem. Now we go to the art world, in the bonsai world, and what happens? I mean, you get people, I've heard this sentence over and over again, oh, you've got to know the rules to break them. What the hell are those rules? Those rules were based on a book made by Halford and Joji Yoshimura, in an attempt to put together in 2050, in 100 pages, a whole school of philosophy and thought, okay, which is the Japanese way of understanding art. It's impossible. You cannot. And then the West ran with this, and they decided they were going to make this the holy grail, to develop trees following these rules, okay? Again, if the rules work for you, please continue, okay? That's not what I'm trying to do, okay? But I want you to please, if I can, if there's one person I can inspire today to think slightly out the box, okay? That is all I'm trying to achieve with this talk, okay? So again, we are individualists. The art of creation is terribly, terribly important, okay? And we find it very, very important to maintain a firm boundary around our sense of self, around who we are, because like I said, we are an expression of the divine. So I've brought these three artworks here. I mean, the easier to look at is the bottom one, Michelangelo, the Sistine Chapel, and if nobody knows the Sistine Chapel, there's a reproduction on the wall up there in the gym. Michelangelo's way of painting, this is the creation of Adam. It's a totally different expression of art and totally original, but when you compare it to Marcel Duchamp, which incidentally is the artist that created the beginning of Western thought in art, and let me digress, when he put a urinal as an art statement in an art exhibition in France at the end of the 1800s, okay? That urinal, you can still see it today in the Tate Modern in London, okay? But what he said with that statement is, I am an artist, and I am an artist, and this is art, because I say this is art. This is my art creation. This is my original creativity, okay? And you have Picasso, which I just happen to love, because Picasso is amazing. And the way he expressively showed the bombardment of a town during the Civil War in Spain, okay? Totally different styles of art. But I thought I'll choose a particular artist which is very easy to look at, which is Lucian Freud, which is a realist artist. And I think it's easy for most people to sort of understand an artwork like this, okay? When an artist, when he got asked, to describe his work, and he got told that he's being influenced by the realists, and he turned around and said, absolutely not. My work is purely autobiographical, and I paint in my own particular style with nobody's influences coming to it. So when we look at this, he felt that this was uniquely his own style of painting, which it is. But he's denying the influence of the German expressionists and the realist artists that came before. So what happens? His work is informed and influenced by all the things that he's seen in his life, all the artworks that he's seen. You as bonsai artists, you keep seeing tree after tree after tree, and you are being influenced by all the people around you. We heard about Charles Seronio yesterday, okay? There was an amazing presentation on his life and how he influenced the rest of the world with his work. Okay? There's no way that you can be in the northern provinces and not be influenced by the work of Charles Seronio. Okay? When we now look at the Buddhist East, we're looking at something completely different. Okay? The Buddhist philosophy is to dissolve the sense of self. In other words, to efface yourself, to disappear. Okay? So what happens? The artists in their mind create without ego. They don't want their personality in the work. They want nature to come through their hands to create a piece of work, okay? So, for example, I've got 3 paintings here, and you can see they're totally different to the 3 paintings I highlighted earlier from the West. They work with 3 planes. They're very often monochromatic, okay? And you've got a foreground, a middle ground, and a background, and there are certain traditions that are followed. But that extends to the point that, for example, when you look at the 3 planes of perspective, and I choose to highlight a particular artist here, okay, who painted during the Song Dynasty, and his name is Fan Quan. He is a highly regarded painter, okay, in the Chinese tradition, in the Eastern tradition. And today you get people that still imitate his work and are happy to put an exhibition and say, imitating Fan Quan, okay? I know no Western artist that will actually put a piece of work in an exhibition saying, imitating Picasso, imitating Lucian Freud, okay? Inspired by, or maybe, but definitely not imitating, okay? So I'm not sure if I'm beginning to explain what I'm trying, the two concepts of art, and if it's becoming a bit clearer or not, okay? So, for example, when we look at Japan, okay, and we talk in Shintoism, which is a religion, again, that self-effaces the self, takes away the self, okay? And they have a reverence for impermanence, for renewal and a different identity. So that sense of wabi-sabi, the permanent in the impermanent, the beauty in the ugly, the beauty in the aged, okay? How things become more valuable as they age. And we have a shrine in Japan called the Ise-Grand Shrine, which is the first time it was built was 1,300 years ago. To anybody there, you ask them what the age of this shrine is, they will say to you it's 1,300 years old. They have a tradition here that every 20 years, this whole shrine gets dismantled, okay, and gets rebuilt from scratch. Yet, to any Westerner, we would say this building is 20 years old. To a person living in the East, they will say this building is 1,300 years old, okay? Are you starting to see where I'm going with this? I mean, you cannot define art just as art, okay? So tradition and perpetuation are valued above abstract notions of originality and authenticity, okay? And that's a very big difference. So how does East meet West? Because it does. Not every artist in the East, okay, believes that they have to, in the East, they have to copy. Not every artist in the West avoids influences, okay? So what is happening now? And we've touched on it in some of the talks. There is a sense of globalization. We had, the internet was created. What's happened to the internet? I mean, if you actually, any one of you puts your hand in your pocket, every one of us has one of these. One of these that is connected to 3 million different websites, 3 billion different websites, 100,000 images of anything, okay? Who has not looked at bonsai on the net? Who has not done searches of different things on the net, okay? So this internet, this globalization have brought the East and the West together. So I've put together here, because this is the talk about what I like, okay, apart from anything else. I put together some trees here that I've always found over the years inspirational. Ángel Mota's olives, you know, from Spain. Then you've got Arnaud Desbois. It's a 300-kilo slab with a tree on top, okay, which I think is absolutely out there, outrageous and wonderful. A juniper by Luis Villa. If you look at that container, it's been broken into pieces, you know. Alarix by Vaclav Novak, okay. Again, a totally different statement. And then a juniper by Peter Ebesberger, okay. If you look at the diagonal that is created by that forest, I mean, it's daring, it's out there. It could not have happened without the influence of Kimura, for example. Okay, and his forests in the weird slabs. And I've got a lot of images to show you, so bear with me, please. So technology and bonsai. The technological advantages have actually made information so easy to acquire. When I started bonsai, and I mean, there's a few people here, okay? Well, or can use one of them. We used to try and get information. We subscribed to periodicals, our clubs, because nobody could actually afford to get these periodicals, okay? So the clubs would order them. And they would take 6 months to a year to arrive. If there was a new book, we would hear about it 6-7 months down the line, and then another 6-7 months down the line to come, and then the queue to get that book in the club. It could take you another 3 years before you got a chance to have a look at that book. Magazines, I remember when Bonsai Today came out. I mean, it was mind-blowing, you know, and the fact that there were a lot of them and you could actually sort of share them, there were few people looking at them. What happens today? You can actually open your cell phone like this right now and log on to any website. You can say bonsai images and you will have 3 million bonsai images in your phone. You have to decide what appeals to you and what doesn't, because now that's your own taste and your own way of seeing that actually is going to dictate what you are going towards or what you're leaning toward. But the internet has made everything possible, not just images, but I mean, how many of you have actually subscribed at some point to Ryan Neal's Bonsai Mirai? I mean, you get a teacher in your living room, once a week. And if you pay a little bit more, you'll even get personal consultations with him in the comfort of your own living room. You put your tree and the camera, and he can give you the most incredible critique. Unlike Ryan, there's hundreds of them there. You can buy videos of Masahiko Kimura working, okay? So the only thing that stops us from actually accessing this information is some of us don't have 3 million rand to spend on our bonsai, okay? But you can group together and you can actually do it as a group or as a club. So it's there and it's instant, okay? And what's happening in North America, we are actually seeing it today here on the same day, maybe 6 hours later, okay? What's happening in Japan, we're seeing it again. What's happening in Korea? I mean, for example, I've got these books, some of the latest books. I mean, you can download anything like this in an instant, okay? The piece that I've got on the side, that was the last BCI convention in Australia, okay? Because of COVID, they had to do it online. So the only thing that stopped you from actually joining that convention was not applying, because you didn't have to go. It cost maybe 1,000 rand to be a part of this and access every single one of the talks. And we had demonstrators like Jonathan there as well, okay? And it gave you demonstrators from all over the world. So, my thoughts. What happens through this? We are developing new ways of seeing, new perspectives, okay? But we need to identify and we need to have the self-esteem to recognize that what you like is good, okay? Just because he doesn't find it beautiful, that doesn't mean that your taste is wrong. I mean, if Org doesn't like pink, okay, and Dawn likes pink, and Dawn wants to make her kitchen curtains pink, okay, the fact that Dawn doesn't actually, that she loves pink, but Org doesn't, is not going to stop Dawn from putting pink curtains in her kitchen, right? So why is it, when it comes to bonsai, that you second-guess yourselves all the time? Why is it that you don't trust yourselves what is working and what is not working, okay? That is something you need to get educated about. What is nice and what is not, in your opinion, okay? Which is nobody else's opinion. So how do you do that? And like I said, I've got a few images I'm going to show you just now, but you need to start looking at these images and seeing what is it about them that is inspiring you. What is it that you would like to bring into your trees from this, into your own trees from these images, and what you think is terrible and you want to throw away, okay? So I think bonsai today, in a Western sense, some of the bonsai today are artworks, okay? And they are artworks because of this global idea that is being developed. When you are using your own creativity to create a piece of work from raw material, then you are creating an artwork. If you are copying a set of rules, if you are following a path that is being written down for you, you have to do so many centimeters, so many this, so many that, this angle, that angle, then you start going in a very different direction. Then you're becoming a copyist, not an artist, okay? And there's quite a few trees on the show here today that I would consider artworks, okay? 30 years ago, there were very few trees on a show that I would consider artworks, right? Again, this is my own personal opinion. Notice that I'm saying my own opinion. And please tell me you're understanding what I'm trying to say. You are a person and you have taste, okay? Right, where do these trees live? Where do they live? They live in your house. Who do they need to please? You, okay? So I've got, for example, some of my very early influences in bonsai, Penjin, okay? The Kimura forests that I was talking about. Remember that Epesberger forest? Without this type of planting, it would have never happened, okay? And notice where these are from all over the world. Nacho Marin with his ceibo using Puerto Rican national trees, okay? Jonathan and Denise Keynes is still on show today there, that Barlia, okay? I think it's a spectacular Barlia that they've got there. David Benavente, a Spanish, very well-known Spanish designer, but he works exclusively with imported Japanese trees, yet he gives them that twist of the drama that the Spaniards tend to love. And of course, Walter Paul. I mean, Walter Paul with his original naturalistic design. And I love his talk about cookie cutter bonsais. What else do we have? We have Bjorn Bjorkholm, which has gone back to Japan. We've got Luis Vallejo, who's got one of the most impressive collections in Europe. Okay, again, traditional Japanese trees maintained, and again, they're getting the drama of the Spanish way of life. You know, Ryan Neal. There's no way I can actually put a lot of images without mentioning Ryan. Louis Nell, I mean, iconic. We saw it yesterday in one of the talks. Japanese deadwood Chimpacus. Robert Steven, Indonesian. I mean, how can he do anything but curly whirlies when everything in his culture is about curly whirlies? From the excess of detail of their paintings to the writing, which is all spikes and curves, okay? And Badisulitsu, which to me was a shock how naturalistic his trees are, after I saw him in a presentation here in Cape Town a few years ago, which I found very disappointing. Yet when I look at his trees, I find them spectacular. This was the original images that changed how we look at bonsai in the West. Okay, these deadwood sculptures with a bit of living beats, you know. But again, Penjin, this type of image that is free, is alive. Look at the diagonals, the sharp movement in these trees, attainable by everybody. Container, background, pot. Look at the careful balance of all of it. It's not just a tree on its own. It's a tree in a container. Okay. The artisan's cap, Ryan Neal. That was at the entrance of the exhibition. What is he doing? He's using container. He's using a natural slab, a natural what's his name? Hannes has used for his Privet, using a natural stand. Here is a piece of deadwood, and suddenly no scroll, but the shadows become that contrast of light and dark. That becomes the scroll, the statement. Again, Ryan. I mean, how many people will attempt? And you'll see there's quite a few images here that have that diagonal move, which I am passionate about, and I find it's incredibly difficult to make work. And yet these artists make it work, because most of us would have cut half the tree to make it work, or reduce half the tree to make it work. And yet he's making this tree work with that diagonal, you know, and that is the purpose of this tree. Bjorn Borgholm, bringing down a cascade, pot, stand, tree, with that snaking life vein coming down, okay? These are not traditional bonsais, guys. Not one of these trees is a traditional bonsai, okay? And they speak to me. They don't have to speak to you, they speak to me, okay? And before you say they're all modern artists, this is Benoki. Benoki was one of the fathers of bonsai in the Western world, okay? Look at those reefs of deadwood coming up. They're almost like waves, you know? Again, Bunmana KTV part, which I've never been able to say that name fast enough. Look at, again, the diagonal of that olive. This olive, we have material like this here, all of us, each and every one of us, right? Look at the excitement of that olive, that diagonal movement, that hollow in the middle. There's nothing unoriginal about this tree, okay? Pavel Slovak. I have argued with this tree with Carl Morrow for many, many years. It's one of my favorite iconic images. To me, a bonsai is a tree in a container. Okay, it's not a tree on its own. It's not a tree without the container. It's not the container on its own. Okay, and Carl always says, yes, but that tree is not very good, very beautiful without the pot. And I totally agree with him. That tree without the pot is okay, but hell, that tree with that Eric Krysovensky pot just flies. Okay, for me, it's an iconic image of what bonsai is about. Okay, if you take that pot away, which was made especially for that tree, that doesn't work, and the pot with another tree doesn't work either. So the unity between the two is actually spectacular, right? And again, Colin Lewis, where the containers being personal started. He actually got Dan Barton to create a pot for him for his blue spruce because he refused to cut that bit of deadwood going down. And Dan Barton, being Dan Barton, he decided to put a bit of blue in that patch that he broke to just emphasize that it's a Colorado blue spruce, okay? A larch by Walter Paul. That's as unlike Walter Paul as we can see it, and yet you can see that naturalistic feel of Walter Paul. This tree doesn't even have taper, okay? And look at the size of the pot. Yet I find that imbalance incredibly exciting, okay? Now we go to Juan Andrade, which is a Puerto Rican that trained in Japan and works in miniatures, and how much more excitement can you get in a cascading tree? I mean, the instability of this planting, and look at the tiny bit at the floor of that planting, the rock is standing on a tiny little bit. And I don't think, well, I didn't think you could get more excitement with instability until I saw Michael Hagedorn's, going the other way around. But can you see how these guys are playing? They're not following a set of rules. They're having fun, guys, okay? Michael Hagedorn again. You can see which are my favorites coming through. But look at it, when he decided to negate the pot altogether. What he's using there is a cutting chopping board, one of those plastic chopping boards, so that you don't even see the pot. It becomes nature in nature. And you can see, again, that diagonal that I tend to love, okay? I love the dynamism of those forms. And Michael Hagedorn, again, with his little bits, another diagonal. Any one of us would have taken one of those two trunks away, probably layered it, okay? And look how he's done. I mean, that's a small tree. It's one of what he calls his little bits that he hangs on the front wall of his inn, okay? For you, that you love the big things, Maurice Steenberger, he was here 2-3 years ago at ABC 2019, okay? I mean, look at the pot made especially for it. Look at the snake trunk and the mushroom almost like quality, okay? Another Eric Krysovensky pot, with a larch. And then we have, I don't have a lot to go, Nacho Marin, the constructive bonsai. I mean, he believes in breaking everything apart, from the canopy to the trunk to the pot, and even the stand that he's using, okay? Hate it, love it, but it's different, and it's really original, and it's a thought process that is very exciting. If we look at Juan Andrade again, where does the stand start, where does the pot start, and where does the tree start? Look at the unity in that display. That is bonsai working as a whole in a display. Neil van Vlerk from Cape Town, his whole end is like this. He actually loves doing displays in his collections, okay? So going to Neil's is a treat to see the way that the trees are displayed, okay? So how does this divide between East and West affect us? I really believe that it's shrinking, that technology is making this divide disappear, because we get to see these images instantly. We get to get excited. I mean, images of this show have been online from the moment that this convention opened, okay? And at the same time, there's images from the Woodlands show, okay, in the Pierneef Museum, and there's images of the Cape Bonsai show in Constantia, okay? They're just talking South Africa, okay, which happened to be in the same weekend, okay? We are learning to appreciate each other's forms of understanding, of beauty, of our artistic language, which again is a language, guys. As English and Afrikaans and French is a visual language, and it's got a language that we need to learn to use. It's called line and space and negative spaces and, texture, light and dark. But I think that for the West, for a piece of artwork to be considered art, needs to have creative thinking behind it. And I think a lot of these images that I have shown you, and some of the trees on display here, have that creative thinking behind it, okay? So for me, bonsai is evolving. Bonsai is no longer a Japanese-centered form of growth of trees. It's become a global conversation. And this global conversation respects differences and respects different ways of seeing. And I think it's very, very important for it to evolve and develop, okay? I think it's important to embrace the way different people look at different things. So yes, some of these artworks are artworks for me. So how does this work in with the road trip across South Africa, okay? So I gave it a lot of thought because, I mean, for most of you, you look at me and you don't think I'm South African. Hell damn it, I'm as South African as you are, okay? I was forced to become South African 45 years ago. The government gave me a passport, okay? Right, so I am South African. I'm also Spanish, okay? My cultural identity is a mixed mash of both of them. My accent is a mishmash of both of them. When I write English, I write beautifully. When I speak, half the people don't understand what I'm saying after they've heard me talk for a while, okay? So what am I? Am I South African? Yes, I am, okay? So what did I actually look at? I actually started looking at something that was important to me. And I think the theme of this convention, and I would like to thank Brad from the bottom of my heart to have put this convention the way they have, because they have actually started creating a unity among the different provinces in South Africa. You have invited speakers and demonstrators from all over South Africa. So everybody's had a voice here. And to me, a national convention should do that. There should be a reflection of what's happening in the rest of the country, okay? So yes, thank you, right? But what happens with people that, like me, you know, are not quite, you know? So what I wanted to do is, as I looked, sorry, let me, right. I want to finish with that, not this. What I did is I actually looked at the trees that I really find have actually marked my heart over the last few years. And I work in Hout Bay, been working in Hout Bay for many, many years, and I live in Plumstead. So I go through Constantia into Hout Bay, and the images that I see when I drive there every single morning and every afternoon, they are as different from the savannas that we've looked and the pear-leaves that we've looked as it's possible to get, okay? For me, a pear-leaf style tree, an acacia style tree, is a dreamlike tree. It's not a realistic tree. I've never seen them in nature. They don't speak to me. It's not in my blood, okay? So for a long time, I thought there was something wrong with me, that I didn't like acacias. Sorry guys, I don't like acacias. They have thorns and they make me bleed, okay? So, right, so that doesn't mean acacias are not beautiful. And that doesn't mean that you don't have to love acacias, okay? But that's my non-love affair with them. So what do I actually see? I look at these amazing oaks that, like me, are naturalized into this country. They're as South African as I am, okay? And when I moved through them, and I actually did something very dangerous, is I took photos of these trees as I was driving, okay? There's a lot of traffic. So look at the branches that you get, right? There's not a single straight line in any of those branches. There's zigzags, there's movement, there's curves, and then there's sharp angles, there's elbows. What did Francois Joecker call them? Raptures. Raptures? Yes. Where a branch breaks and it suddenly changes direction. There's crisscrosses branches everywhere, okay? I have never, in all the years that I have been looking at trees, I have never seen in nature a tree grow a branch like this. I mean, I have never seen a 45-degree branch come out of a tree. I've seen a lot of bonsais like that, but I've never seen a natural tree doing that, especially in this country. Trees grow upwards, and the branches go up. Like Gary was saying, they might then get damaged, or through age they start coming down, but the first part comes up because they want to go towards the light, okay? So you can see the images. Look at the branches, and the older the tree, the more exciting it is. I'm concentrating on the oaks, but I'm also going to bring one pine just to prove to you that in Cape Town we do have pines, but they don't look like Christmas trees. This is what our pines look like, okay? They lose all the branches at the bottom, they just have a tiny canopy on top, and that's fairly young. As soon as they get a bit older, they lose every branch at the bottom and they just have a small tipple at the top, okay? That's how our pines age. Not by having branches going down, okay? So what am I doing? I'm looking at what's around my environment, which is what you are all doing when you're looking at a road trip through South Africa, right? So what happens in the Cape? These are oaks. You're driving through them today, and then a week later you go, and this is what you see. Suddenly, everything's green. You get these tunnels that you drive through. There's no open spaces like you get in the savannas, crisscross branches again, and more greenery. These photos were taken with a space of about 10 days between the first one and the last one, okay? And then you can see there's no space. Wherever you drive, there is trunks and more trunks and canopies on top of you. Look at that branch coming down from the top. It gets broken in a storm, the next bit comes on, another piece gets broken. Look at the taper of those branches. Look at the taper of this tree. Look at the taper in those branches. There's nothing regular about them. There's nothing planned about them. There's an informal development and a very natural development. And, we get told deciduous trees cannot have deadwood. They do. In the Western Cape, most of the oaks have deadwood. It's just not the deadwood we see in the Japanese trees. It's a deadwood that eats away at the center of the tree. It's made because of decay. It's made because of humidity. Okay, so a lot of these trees end up hollow in the middle. Okay, and when you see the deadwood starting, you can see it on the top, but that tree gets slowly but surely hollowed down. So what do we do when we come here? There are many qualities, that I love about these trees that I like to reflect in my bonsai. But I like to think beyond that. What is this convention for? What is this convention about? It's a road trip about South Africa. You've had, I don't know how many presenters you will have in the 2 days that this has happened, but each one of us has given you an outlook of what is happening in our region and what is alive in our region and how we think in our regions. Now we have two choices. We either stand here and then go home and carry on doing what we've been doing, okay, which is what normally happens, or we can go home and think about this. And at the next club meeting, you can share some of the insights. Like Richard was asking, what has been the highlight for you? Okay? Share those insights with the people you grow bonsai with that haven't been here, because that is how knowledge develops. You plant a small seed, and that seed gets nurtured, and if you actually look after it and encourage it, it develops into something. That something might not be something that you want to last for the next 20, 30 years, but it might spout somebody else's thought process, okay? So we grow as a community, we grow together, we share what we know. And that, to me, is what the spirit of bonsai is all together, And I would very much like that we have that natural feel for me of the trees. I like to keep it. And in my community, I have developed and spread the news, and spread the knowledge. And now there's a lot of people that we can argue with and we can get ideas with and get inspired. Because some of the youngsters, hybrid, have now taken the knowledge that much higher. And now he's getting inspired by Richard. And then he's bringing that inspiration back into Cape Town. And then we are learning from that inspiration. So then we're becoming a whole group together. And then we look at the things that I love, for example, the natural feel, the wabi-sabi in these trunks, branches that crisscross. That is what I'm aiming to have in my bonsai, okay? Many of you would probably look at my trees today and think, they give me so much joy, okay? And that's what I'm looking for my trees, And each one of them is unique. And I would like you to be able to go home and create something unique that you love and that gives you pleasure, okay, for yourself. And that's about what I have to say, because I am a naturalized foreigner, like the trees that I'm going to work with. And when it comes to the tree, this is the tree that I got from Leslie. And this tree is old. Again, it's a naturalized tree. And I want to actually show you that when you do a demonstration, you don't have to have a finished tree. Bonsai doesn't happen overnight. Bonsai is a process, okay? So when you do the first design on a tree, especially a tree that is fairly deciduous, like this is, okay? You can't wire the branches like you do in a juniper. You have to cut. So what you're going to see is a tree, because I've got a tree that is two parts. It's got a base that is a tree, and then I've got these long, straight, taperless branches. So I can't create a bonsai with it unless I get rid of all that straightness. So in the end, you're not going to see a beautiful composition like you saw yesterday. You're going to see the first step in a bonsai design that will actually grow over the next 2-3 years into a finished tree. Okay? And as the tree matures and develops, It might take longer because it's deciduous, so it might take 10 years to get there. But it's got now the basis, and you will see that I'm going to be trying to look for those movements and those hollows and things like that. So guys, I hope I didn't bore you too much, so thank you so much. Okay, I want to show you that what I've cut off, can you see it's long straight branches? There's no movement, there's no taper, there's nothing here. So virtually we got two things in this tree. We had a base that I thought was spectacular and some really, really hideously ugly branches. Okay, so I cut off what I found ugly and I was left with, and I mean it didn't matter what thickness, you can see they were all straight. I kept what I thought was beautiful about the tree. What appealed to me was the base, was the white width of the base, the dead wood in the base, and I originally was going to try and do a clamp, but the cascade is what the tree wanted to do, that semi-cascade. So we have a very small cut here, a very small cut here, a very small cut here, and nothing. And I would like to see this tree in 3, 4, 5 years' time, because it could be a very beautiful little tree to actually, it has a future which should be not happy for. But I didn't start with a preconceived idea, and if you look at it, the branches are where I needed them, you know, not according to how many centimeters and not one of them does that, okay? Please guys, that's not a very natural looking at it. So thank you, that's all I have to say.